your kit, you'll find a bit of raffia. You'll find 3 chenille stems or pipe cleaners, a dowel rod, a skewer with a pointed end, three wooden beads, two small pony beads, three bundles of yarn in green, red, and purple, and your wreath form hoop. This project involves the use of lark's head knots, and so we are going to make our first one to form the hanger for the wreath. So we will begin by taking our strip of raffia, and I'm going to cut a piece about 8 inches long with my scissors. And I will begin by turning this 8-inch strip into a loop. And to do that, I will bring the ends together and I will tie a knot in it, but I will be sure to slide that knot down toward the ends of the raffia. So I want that knot as close to the ends there as possible. And I will tighten that knot and see we have formed a loop. So to create our lark's head knot, we're going to take our hoop, and I personally am going to look for a flaw or the break in the hoop. And there's this little flaw right here, and this is where the hoop comes together. I think I'm going to put my knot here, and this is going to hide this. So to form a lark's head knot, we simply put the raffia behind the wreath form, and we are going to send the bottom loop up through the top of our raffia. And now we've created a loop that is secured to the wreath. And this knot down here can be hidden when we add our florals later. This is all we're gonna do to begin. So I'm going to set this entire piece aside to use later. For the purposes of this tutorial, I'm going to be referring to our little witches as dolls. And so the next step of this process is to create our doll bodies and heads. For this, we will need our 3 wooden beads and our 3 pipe cleaners or chenille twisty things. I'll begin by folding each pipe cleaner in half, making the ends meet at the bottom, and just pinching at the top. I will do this for each pipe cleaner. And next we are going to thread the rounded end where we made our fold through the bead. And for our first doll, she has the black, tall, swoopy hair, and I want to create a form for that swoopy hair to build on. So I am actually going to give her a tall piece that pushes through that bead. And next I'm just going to kind of twist this a couple of times and let that be what it is. For the other two dolls, we don't need to worry about building a piece for the hair like this. So we will just push our bead through until it barely sticks out over the top. I'm going to push my bead down just a little bit so I can grab it to twist. Push that bead back up into place and lay that one down. And I will take the third one here and do the same thing. Push it up through the bead, do some twisting, and then push that bead back up to where the wire does not stick up past the bead. There is a little bit of fuzzy hair, but that's fine. All right, next we're going to create our arms from these three. And so you can see they sort of have arms right now, but we want them to be in a size that's kind of proportional to the doll head. So I'm going to twist as much as I need in order to create a little bit of length for a small neck. And then I'm going to bend these straight out to the sides, like so. After I've done this, I will determine how long I think the arm needs to be to look kind of proportional to the head. And I will pinch and fold the pipe cleaner in to achieve that length. So on this one where we've used some of it for the support for the hair, there's not going to be as much left over. And I will kind of twist these to secure them into place. So that's one, a neck and arms. The next one, I can see I've twisted too far down, and that's a really long neck, so I'm going to untwist a bit of this. And kind of try again to get a little closer to the head with my twisting. Okay, now I have a neck. I'm going to bend those arms straight out to the sides, and then bend this back toward the doll to get the approximate arm length that I want. Now this doesn't need to be perfect. They don't all need to be even. This is a cute little rustic looking craft, and you absolutely don't need to be perfect with this. These dolls will end up kind of holding hands and cover each other's arm length later. So if they don't all match, that's totally fine. Okay, so there's my second one. And then the third one, I have twisted to the appropriate length for my neck on this one. So I'll go ahead and bend my arms out to the side from there. And bend those arms back in. And pinch and twist. Okay, here we go. So now, to keep these beads from popping off easily, I am going to raise the heads just a slight bit and put a small dot of hot glue onto the pipe cleaner at the base of the neck. Okay, so there's my small dot, and I am going to gently push that bead back down, making sure that I leave room for the neck. If you have some hot glue that sticks out, this is going to mostly be covered later. Don't worry about it. I promise it's fine. Same thing for the next doll. I pull the head up, place a bead of glue just on that pipe cleaner right below the head, push the head back down to the height of the neck, and I let it rest. And for our third and final, I will do the same thing. Push that head down. If you do have a bead of hot glue that kind of shows, you can choose this as the back of the doll so that the front is free of glue. Okay, now I have my 3 dolls ready, and it's time to attach them to our dowel rod using the yarn that we have for their dresses. So this is going to involve some lark's heads knots. First I'm going to set these doll bodies and heads to the side. They will be our last step. And let's work on putting 3 lark's heads knots with our yarn across this dowel. I'm going to start by making sure that my yarn strands are fairly even, and the order that they go begins with red. And so I'm going to lay this long U shape of yarn strands first. Next I'm going to do a long U shape of my green strands. And then finally, a long U shape of purple strands. And these are the order that they will go onto the dowel rod. Okay, I'm gonna start by placing my dowel rod in the middle here. And to create these lark's heads knots, I am simply going to grab the ends. After I string my thumb and forefinger through the bottom here to grab onto these ends, I hand my ends to myself and then I pull to secure. So that's lark's heads knot number 1. I'm gonna do the same thing with the green yarn. Slip these 2 fingers through so I can grab the yarn when I hand it to myself. Grab these ends, make sure to get all of them, and pull them through and say hello to my dog who is fussing at the cat. Pull those to secure, and then finally we will do the purple. Pull through and tighten to secure. So those are our 3 lark's heads knots. Lark's head knots. I will fix that extra loop there later. I can find what yarn that's attached to. And pull to tighten. You're going to notice that the yarn isn't even on the ends, and that's fine. We're going to deal with that later. I'm going to kind of scooch these toward the middle a little bit, making sure that my green yarn is centered as well as possible. And then next up, we're going to work on getting the dolls into their dresses. So to make life easier for our future selves, and to make our future selves say, hey, thanks, past self, we are going to set the dresses and the dowel rod aside, and we are actually going to work on our doll's hair before we go any farther. And so what we will need for this part is our yarn that's been provided for hair in black, yellow, and orange. I'm going to begin with the doll that has the black hair that creates kind of a comb shape on top. And to start, I will find the end of my black yarn. This is the front of my doll because I have a larger glue bead on the back here. And so I want to take the back, and what I'm going to do is create an outline of what the hairline is going to look like with my hot glue gun and start placing hair along the hairline. So I know in the back, hairlines are often a little bit lower and come down closer to the neck. So I'm going to start back here with a small line of glue. And I'm going to place this over that. Now this is where your wooden skewer can come in handy. Instead of burning your fingers, you can use your skewer to place the hot glue and the yarn together. Now I was too slow about this, so a handy tip I've learned is if you want to remelt already existing hot glue, all you have to do is hold the hot tip of your glue gun to that glue section, and that will remelt it. I want a larger dab of glue personally, so I'm going to add some and try again to affix this yarn to that spot. Again, I can use my skewer to really press down on that. And now the hairline is going to angle up just a little bit as if there were ears here. So I'll put another little strand of glue there and angle it up. Now we're reaching the front of the doll, and I want the hair to come across the forehead. So I will pull that onto the glue. And we're going to start angling back down on this side again, over where an ear would be, and then match it back up to the hairline at the back. So there we go. And again, if you have hot glue that kind of sticks out and shows, that is a-okay. In the end, this creates kind of shiny, cobwebby looks and gray hair looks, and it actually looks pretty cool. So now I'm just going to spiral up with this hair. Spiraling up. Putting glue dots every so often to make sure that it does hold to the head. And it's okay if you find that your spirals aren't completely 100% connected. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can always go back and add more yarn, rewrap that section by just bringing a strand a little bit lower again. Or just keep going and trust the process. I hope you're better at using your skewer than I am, because I do in fact keep burning myself a little bit, which is entirely unnecessary. I tend to be too slow between the glue and the yarn placement to also be able to grab the skewer in between. But I don't want you burning yourself for this craft. Okay, so I am going to start affixing it to this little pipe cleaner that we left hanging out over the top. And I'm not winding too tightly because that's more likely to create space that I don't necessarily want between the yarn strands. And just keep winding up. as I get closer to the top, I'm winding just a little bit tighter so that her hair kind of comes to a point for me. Okay, so now we've got this, and she just has a couple little sprouts on top of the pipe cleaner, and I'm gonna put a bead of glue right on top here and work on covering that up with the yarn. Again, I'm sort of working in spirals for that. And if the top tips over like mine did right here, that's actually kind of great because her hair does fall sideways like this in the movies. We've got some windswept witches. Okay, I have just a little bit more of a pipe cleaner showing right here, so I'm going to put another small dab of glue here and come down and around a couple of times, and that has created kind of a hook on the end of her hair anyway, and I love that. And I am going to clip my yarn really close to the back of the hair and pull off some of the stringies, unless you want more cobwebs than less. They are witches after all. Okay, so this is doll number 1. Doll number 2 is Winifred with the red hair and buns, but we're gonna start her the same way we started doll number 1, with creating a hairline first. So this is the front of my doll. I've decided this is the back because there's a slightly larger bead of glue under the neckline. So on the back, I'm going to take the end of my yarn and secure it to the back of the head, kind of at the base where the hairline begins. And place that right there. Yep, I didn't have enough glue, so let me try that again. Okay, right at the base. All right. I'm going to secure this other end a little bit better along the hairline. There we go. And now I'm going to start angling up with my glue kind of toward where ears would be. Once again, if your glue kind of sticks out underneath, that is a-okay. Now I'm bringing the hairline up even higher for where the forehead would be. And if you don't get it straight across the front, that's fine. These dolls can have a side part. None of these hairstyles are gonna look the same from doll to doll. If you do this craft multiple times, they're not gonna look the same from person to person, and there is really fun stuff that happens between the different designs. None of them are ever the same. And I love that about crafts like this. Okay. So I felt like my hairline started a little bit too high in the back. So my next loop of yarn, I'm actually bringing below instead of above the first loop. And then once I get to the front, I will crisscross over eventually, and that's going to create kind of a side part look as well. A little bit of glue right across that glue. And then here is where I will switch to wrapping in back again. So bring that hair right over. And we'll continue wrapping around. You might notice that this orange yarn is thinner than the black yarn was, and so it does take more spirals in order to build to the same height. And that's okay. Just keep gluing, just keep gluing. What do? We glue. Okay, now I'm actually going to try to cover the entire bead up on top here with the orange yarn. So we're going to give her all of her hair, and then we'll do her buns last. So keep going. There we go. So I'm going to clip this really close to the head. There we go. So we have the spiral portion of her hair done. Yes, there's some hot glue sticking out. It's fine. Spider webs. Okay. Next, it's time to use our small pony beads, and we are going to glue each of these on where we want the buns to go on this doll. So I will start by placing a dot of glue here, and I will place bun number 1. Here for bun number 2. I want to leave a little bit of space between them so that I'm able to wrap yarn between them. I want to be able to wrap yarn around both beads. So here we are, and once that glue is cool and dry, we're ready to start wrapping her hair. Once again, I'm going to start in the back, and I'm going to grab that orange yarn, and on the back of one of these beads. It doesn't matter which one you begin with first. I'm gonna start with the left and put a little dot of glue on the bead and attach my yarn to that bead. And now I'm gonna wrap kind of figure 8 style. So I've attached it here. I'm gonna come around the front and come around the back of the second bead. And then figure 8, figure 8. It's time for me to add a couple of dots of glue to keep all of this in place. So I will add one right here in the middle where they crisscross. Bring that up and figure 8 around this other one. I'm going to add a dot of glue here to secure that nicely. And okay. And now I have these beads mostly covered except for on the tops. So at this point, what I'm gonna do is a continuous spiral on the left one here. So that we cover the whole top of the bead. So we spiral and we get a little bit smaller as we spiral up so that it covers that entire bead hole. And a little more glue. Oop, sticking to my thumb. Okay, now that bead is covered, and I am gonna clip this yarn really close to the last place that it has glue on it. Gonna trim off this tiny piece of glue. And now I'm gonna take my end of the yarn and go over to this other bead that's not quite covered on top. Again, I'm gonna start on the back side, kind of between the two buns. Back. Make sure that's attached before I start pulling on it. And then I will spiral this up as well until we have covered the entire bead. So spiral, spiral, spiral. Whoop, sticking to finger. Okay, and then I will clip my yarn at the very end there. And I'm gonna trim this little bit of glue that I had on there. Now, there we go. We have Winifred and her crazy high messy buns. For our final doll, we're going to use the yellow hair, and what I'm going to do is pull one of these strands out. They are in groups of 3 strands. Each string is a group of 3. I'm going to pull out one strand and then one of the group of 3 from there. Otherwise, I'm going to lay all of these pieces end to end and try to line them up as best as possible. I'm gonna lay them across this, and I'm actually gonna tie all of these pieces together with this small string. We want this to be tight, but not so tight that you break your yarn, so don't put too much tension here. And I will do just a double knot, and this hair is almost done already. So what I'm gonna do is think about, okay, in the front of the hair we're gonna have a part, and that's what this string has created for us. I'm gonna face the knots down, and I'm gonna pull some hair toward the back because this will be the back of the hair, and then I'm gonna leave a section parted up front for the front of the hair. Now, similarly to what we did earlier, we're gonna kind of follow a hairline. To begin with, I'm going to put a dot of glue just right in the middle of that knot that I tied and place it right on top of the head. Once it's glued down, then we will be able to worry about our hairline shapes. So, get some glue. There we go. And get that knot side down. I'm just gonna hold it right here for a minute while that glue sets. Okay. Now then, I'm gonna move to the back of the doll. And I know I want hair to cover this down to about here where a hairline would end. So I am just gonna put some glue all over the back here. Not a huge amount or anything, but just enough to come down to the hairline. And I'm gonna pull some of these strands flat against that, so we're covering the back of the head. Okay. Now in front, I don't want my hairline to start clear up here on top of the head. I do want some strands to come down the sides closer to where the ears would be. So I'm gonna put another little string of glue here and pull just a couple strands to that to keep them secure. And same thing on this side. Kind of diagonally across where her ear would be. And just kind of press that down. And last thing I want to do is kind of soften this little bump here where we have our thread holding everything together. And to do that, I'm going to swoop some hair across from the opposite side. So first I'm going to separate these 3 strands within the one. Okay. And I'm going to take 2 of these strands and kind of pull them across sideways. And I will need a dot of glue to stick those down. There we go. Okay. So now we have hair for our 3rd doll. Now it's time to get these ladies dressed. All right, we have our 3 doll arms and heads and our 3 dresses made. And what we need to do is one by one loosen up these lark head knots. And what I want to do is make the arms come through the same loops that the dowel rod goes through. And I want the bead to end up in front of the dowel rod. So I'm going to take this little doll here. I'm going to lay her flat across the dowel rod. And I'm going to kind of gently lift these strings over the arm. I'm going to hold her in place, gently lift these strings over the arm. And then while I have gathered both sides in front, I'm going to gently pull to tighten that lark's head knot once more. And I'm going to cinch these together, and I'm going to pull. I'll kind of push the doll arms back, and I'll pull. Okay, so now we have one dressed witch. We're going to repeat the same thing for the second one. So I'm going to loosen the knot, find where the two halves separate here. I'm going to place the doll with arms in front of the dowel rod and put her arm through the loops of the knot and put this arm through the loops of the knot. I'm going to hold this secure while I gently tighten the lark's head knot. And you may have to kind of push and pull your doll arms a little bit to be able to tighten your knot and keep it in place. And that's okay. I'm going to hold the doll in place, tighten, tighten, tighten. There we go. We have our second doll. And the knot comes across as a waist for the dolls. And so now we do our third one, the purple one. I'm going to loosen, separate the two sides of yarn. Gonna kind of move her hair out of the way. We can arrange it later. I'm gonna place her arms in front of the dowel rod and pull her sleeves over her arms. Kind of cinch this knot a little bit while I hold her body in place on the dowel rod. Tighten, tighten. Oop, I have a bump in one of my yarns up here. So we can always loosen that knot again and find the string that did not pull. Which one didn't tighten? And sometimes if I don't want to deal with figuring that out, I will just pull that string out. And this dress will have one fewer strand of yarn in it. So I am going to kind of tighten these knots, adjust these dolls underneath them, make sure I'm happy with the shape of the dresses and the positioning of the dolls. Okay. So once again, now that these are tightened onto the dowel rod, I'm going to make sure that our center doll, Winifred, is scooted to the center of the dowel rod. I'm just kind of eyeballing it. You can measure if you want to be a little more precise with it. And now I'm just going to space these ladies apart such that they can kind of hold hands, and so that they're all kind of evenly spaced. I'm also going to pull their arms and bend them down from the dowel rod so that there's a little bit of differentiation between their arms and the dowel. And then I can scoot them a little bit closer together so that they can hold hands. And once I'm happy with the placement of the girls, then I am going to lay them face down. And if they're all face down, all of the beads and the bodies are kind of laying evenly. So this is a great time to put some hot glue so that they can no longer slide and they can't like bend and twist around the dowel rods. So if you can see here on the red one, I am kind of opening up the sleeves at the back. I'm placing a dot of glue right where the sleeves come together and where the bottom of the dress starts to flare out. And I am just kind of pushing all of those together, and that should secure everybody. So again, here on Winifred, I'm separating the sleeves, placing a dot of glue right where the skirt begins, right on that dowel rod, squeezing the sleeves back together, and that should have her secure. Once again, we're moving this hair out of the way. We are going to separate these sleeves and place a dot of glue right here. It's a generous dot for this. And squish that back together. And now she is secure. Okay, so now we have our dolls. They are secured to the dowel rod, all in the same facing forward positions. Now it's time to grab our wreath form once again and to figure out the positioning we want our dolls. I find that it's really cute to kind of position the dolls in the bottom third, and that way their dresses will hang over the edge of the bottom. And then when we put some florals up top here, it just kind of creates a nice look. You're welcome to move them more to the center. Your dowel is the same length as the diameter of your circle, so it could potentially go right in the middle if you wanted to. I'm gonna put mine down here around the bottom third. To do this, I'm gonna start by securing the dowel rod with, once again, her hair out of the way. I wanna make sure that that's kind of centered where I want it. And I'm gonna place a generous dot of glue on the wreath form on this side and hold it until it sets. And I will repeat the same on the other side, securing the dowel to the wreath form. Okay, and my dowel has popped up on one side, which is why the next step of this process is to create some lashing so that we will really hold this into place properly. And so to create the lashing, I'm going to use my raffia, and I will flip this upside down. I'm gonna take one end of the raffia and secure it to the back of where I've just attached the dowel rod. Let that dry. Okay. Now I'm gonna take my raffia and wrap it in kind of an X shape around this dowel. So, oops, that popped loose and that's okay. I'm gonna X shape across this twice. Oops. It can be helpful to cut your raffia into a shorter strand so that you're not having to thread the whole thing through everything. So this has come loose for me, and I'm gonna reattach the raffia to where the dowel and the wreath meet. We're doing that first wrap of our X. The second wrap is gonna come up and go across the dowel instead. And it will come around back again, but this time through. So we're creating kind of a crisscross with our lashing. And after I have crisscrossed a couple of times, then I will secure this end to the back. Let it dry. Take my scissors and snip that off of there. And this raffia is split a little bit, so I'm going to put one more dot and make sure to secure these a little more fully. And I will use my skewer to press those down. Try to use my skewer more quickly this time. There we go. So now it's time to do the same thing on the other side of my dowel rod. I'm going to create some lashing to really hold this dowel in place. So I will start here. And by putting a dollop of glue, and secure my raffia end. And I'm gonna wrap this around like so. And this time I'm gonna wrap it around the dowel rod and through the hoop. You are welcome to use leftover yarn for this, or anything else that you find that you like. I like the look of the raffia because it's kind of neutral. I'm gonna put a large dot of glue back here to really secure this final end of raffia. Hold that down before I snip it. And now we snip, snip. There we go. So now on the front, you can see that we have these X-shaped lashes to just hold that in place. Now that we have our dolls attached on the dowel rod to the wreath form, it's a great time to make sure that our hanging loop is actually centered on our project. So I see that that is right about center where I want it to be. And so I'm going to take a small dot of glue and tack this down so that it doesn't want to shift while I put the florals on. Okay. Now I have this sprig of greenery here, and what I personally want to do is kind of have this angled off to the side. I want it to cover my dowel rod just a little bit, and this long stem is actually going to kind of wrap around down here and be hidden. So to begin with, I am going to kind of pinch up here where my greenery starts, and I'm gonna gently wrap the wire portion of this stem around the wreath form, just to kind of give it a little bit of stability. I'm also going to take a piece of raffia and I'm going to wrap that stem just to make sure it's secure. The doll dress will be hiding most of this, so I'm not really super concerned about the glue showing or anything like that. We start here and we will wrap. And I'll do another dot of glue to secure that into place. And snip. There we go. I actually don't like this wire hanging down past the raffia because it kind of sticks out. So I'm gonna take my really junk scissors. Please don't use good scissors for this. And I am going to snip this wire. Maybe. I can also, there we go. Okay. So I want some of my greenery covering over here. I'm gonna kind of place how I want these things to lay out as I go. And here we go. I'm liking this. I'm gonna start placing a few dots of glue here and there to just hold everything in place right where I want it to be. So there's one. Here's this one. I like it laying across right here. This is naturally wanting to pull away a little bit right here, and I'm gonna let it do that. There's no sense in fighting it. Little dot. Another little dot. We're gonna come back and put some glue on the back of this to really make sure that the floral stem is secure. But right now we're just getting kind of things generally placed where we want them to be. Okay. So now I'm going to come to the back with this. And to really make extra double plus good sure that the greenery is attached, I'm going to string some hot glue from one side of the floral across the wreath back to the other side of the floral. This just adds a little extra security, especially since this particular greenery is made of all of these little balls. It tends to kind of pull the balls off easily, and it would be easy for this to loosen up if we didn't go back and do this kind of extra securing step from the back. All right. Okay, at this point, your wreath can be done, or if you'd like to fluff out the ladies' dresses, now is the time where we can do that. So in order to do that, it does take some time. It can be kind of a painstaking process, but it can be worth it in the end. So I'm going to look at how this yarn is twisted, and I'm going to start twisting it the opposite direction. We're going to kind of untwist, and you can see it's kind of getting fatter and thinning out, and I can differentiate the 4-ply from this yarn as I continue untwisting it. So once I get it untwisted, I will come to the top and pull with my skewer individual strands. So there's one. It is painstaking, but also kind of worth it. So I will unwind this again. If you find that it's hard to find a separation between your yarns, maybe continue untwisting a little bit. You can also use a yarn needle for this, a fork tine, a tine of a comb, but see how you get little thin fluffy pieces. This allows their skirts to fluff out, and it differentiates them from the bodice of the dress, which can be kind of neat. So I'm going to continue doing this and show you what it looks like afterwards, and we'll meet back. Once we have all of the strands separated, then it's time that we can trim these dolls at the bottom. So I am going to lay this out flat in front of me. I'm going to take my skewer and line it up parallel to the dowel rod and kind of lay it across the bottom of the dresses as a marker for where I'm going to cut. And then I'm going to take my scissors and just start trimming across. couple that I missed here and there, and I can go back and trim those up. And then we have some straight dresses. And now our wreath is complete. Congratulations! Today I'll be showing you how to make this adorable fall wreath featuring these 3 iconic witch sisters. Let's get started.